Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished and respected professional from the UK, Mr. Douglas Squirrel. Douglas,
Hello,
welcome to the show.
nice to
Doug-
see you.
Thank you. Douglas is an expert on making tech teams insanely profitable and is a director of Squirrel Squared Limited.
Sounds very impressive, but you're looking at him.
That's two of you. One is the company and one is you.
Exactly.
Uh, Douglas, before we talk about what you're doing at Squirrel Squared, tell me about your own journey. And you worked across domains from fintech to biotech and even music.
Oh, and
How
rocketry.
has, and sorry,
And rocketry. I got
and
people who are shooting rockets into the sky. They
wonderful,
don't
and
blow them up as
rocketry.
often as Elon Musk, but I got everyone in every place.
Fascinating. How
So
has
you want to
this
hear the history?
diverse background shaped your perspective on leadership?
Makes sense. Well, I'll tell you that my initial experience of leadership was my CEO of the very small company that I worked at
Hmm.
walking along to me one day and saying, "Here's your business card." And the business card said CTO on it. And I said, "I have no idea how to be a CTO. What are you talking about? I hardly know how to write a program."
Hmm.
So I had to learn real quick. And as I learned, I discovered that I was really fast at what I did. And the first team that I worked in, I managed to get them turned around, really functioning well after about 10 years.
Hmm.
And at that point, I got fired
Hmm.
in a really nice way because the founder, the CEO said, "Squirrel, you built this amazing team. They're doing this super job. They're got great processes. They got good people. You're kind of expensive. There's not much for you to do. Why don't you go be wonderful somewhere else?" And it was really nice.
Hmm.
Then I got fired after 2 years. Then I
Okay.
got fired after 1 year. And I said, "There's a pattern here," because they were all the same kind of firing, this kind
Okay.
of go be wonderful somewhere else. And
Hmm.
that's when I became a fractional CTO.
Hmm.
So I would work with maybe one company, two companies at a time, 2, 3 days a week, and really transform and change their business, get them insanely profitable. And then I'd fire myself. And that was kind of nicer.
Hmm.
But since then, I've worked with about 350 companies around the world. I've gotten to every continent except Antarctica. I'm scared of penguins. But
Hmm.
I've managed to work in every area, and I fire myself really fast these days. I never take more than 3 months to do a transformation, a coaching project, something like that.
Hmm.
My records in the last few months are one guy in 2 weeks and another person finished in about 6 weeks.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I move people fast, I bring their skills up, I get them working a new way, and then I get the heck out of the way.
Fascinating. And how did the idea of using the power of conversations as a transformational tool in tech teams evolve for you?
Well, that's fascinating because us engineers, we kind of like to talk to computers.
Yeah.
And we like computers because they give us ones and zeros, and these annoying humans, they have all these feelings and shades of gray and stuff, and it's tough for us engineers.
Um,
I stumbled across something, and I had a number of helpers, people who worked with me and helped me find this stuff. There's amazing social science research from the 1970s that's
mm,
buried in dusty journals. Nobody pays any attention to it. It's written in this complex jargon. And I found it and I said, "My God, this tells engineers exactly how to talk to people. It's
mhm,
amazing." For example, if you want to build trust with someone, there's a process you can follow that's very much
mm,
like testing a piece of software.
mm,
Ashutosh, did you notice that when we came on, I had a little trouble with my microphone? Yes, I
mhm,
did. What's important to me about that is, I need better equipment for us to do these podcasts together. Do you
mm,
think that's important? And we go on, we keep asking questions like that, testing
mm,
at every stage.
mhm,
Ashutosh, do you agree with
mm,
this? Do you
mm,
see it this way? Do you see it differently?
mm,
I was just helping someone do this yesterday. He's traveling in New York and he's working with his senior leadership. And I was taking him through these steps.
mhm,
He said, "My God, this is just so much easier
mm,
than trying to make it up as I go because I have steps to follow." And that's what engineers love. And
mm,
so I was able to give the people I was coaching all these techniques that I'd pulled out of these ancient tomes and write them all down and say, "Here are some tools you can use for having a better meeting, for jointly designing a solution, for
mm,
delegating to somebody."
mm,
And they're step-by-step tools. Anybody can follow them.
mm,
And so I've been teaching those for the last 15, 20 years,
mm.
and finally wrote them down in a book called Agile Conversations. So you
Wow.
got 10 books, I got one, but
Mm. Fascinating.
I'm working to catch up with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. The other thing that fascinated me when I was reading about you was that you live in a 15th century cottage in Frogholt, UK.
That is correct. Now,
How does
that's not
your
where I am right now. This is not 15th century behind me. But yes, I
okay,
do live in a 600-year-old house that's got a thatched roof. Absolutely beautiful location. My main
amazing.
neighbors are sheep.
Hmm. So tell me, how does this environment influence your work and thought processes?
Well, that's fascinating because I'm working with these very high-tech folks who are inventing AI tools and amazing rockets and other stupendous things, but I'm doing it in this ancient building that
Hmm.
is built out of timbers that are aged and petrified because they're so old.
Hmm.
And the contrast between those two is really fun to work with. It just makes it
Hmm.
fun for me to do what I do because I can be talking with someone about some amazing innovation in genomics research,
Hmm.
then turn around and look at the beams that were put up in 1450 and how they were marked. And I can use the one to inform the other. So I'm often saying, hey, wait a minute. When the person who built my house,
Hmm.
they didn't have a lot of the planning tools that we have today, but they did
Mm.
mark their beams in Roman numerals, and you can see them above me in the study
Wow.
where I work.
Mm.
And when they did that kind of planning, they could always adjust it. Oh, I don't want this to be the second beam. I want it to be the third. Guess what? I'm going to add one more mark. Now it's the third
Amazing.
beam.
Mm.
And when engineers are very inflexible, as they often are, and they say, I can't change the plan. I made the plan. It has to be this
Mm.
way. I can use those kinds of examples from industries that are older than the countries my clients are in often.
Mm.
Then there's very strong evidence for why they might try to be a bit more flexible, why they might plan in a
Yeah.
different way, for example.
Mm. Very interesting. Let's not talk about your company, Squirrel Squared Limited. And you do a lot of coaching with for technology teams. What is the first thing you look for when you decide to coach a technology team?
Curiosity.
Hmm.
So, and that curiosity could be located anywhere. Sometimes the
Mm.
team is sort of beaten down. They've been given unrealistic deadlines. Salespeople have sold stuff that they don't have, and the team can't build it. And they're kind of demoralized. They're not
Mm.
curious.
Mm.
Maybe they're curious about another job,
Hmm.
and so I might be coming in to help them with that. Or
Mm.
it could be that they're very curious and they're very interested, but they're super academic. They're not
Mm.
being responsive to customer needs. There's all
Mm.
kinds of problems they could have. But I want to find somebody in the business who's curious about what customers need and
Mm.
what the technology could do to support that.
Mm.
Far too many people look at their technology as a cost center
Mm.
when they say, well, I just have to pay this amount to run an app and then I can put things on the phone and the real value is going to come from something else.
Mm.
When they never notice that they could be downloading the brains of very smart people
Hmm.
and putting them into their app, putting them into their programs, putting them into their APIs and tools.
Mm.
And then that's much more reproducible. That's much
Mm.
more ongoing
Yeah.
value.
Yeah.
And their engineers know how to do that, but nobody's been curious enough to say, hang on, couldn't we automate this? Couldn't we have a
Mm.
computer do this? Couldn't we teach an AI to do this
Mm.
nowadays? And if somebody is curious like that, I don't care whether it's the CEO or the head of product or an engineer or somebody in marketing. If I got somebody curious, I can work with them because I
Mm.
can say, now here's some questions you can go ask the
Yeah.
engineers. They're kind of demoralized over there.
Mm.
Ask them, what if we didn't give you this kind of assignment, but instead we had you work on this customer priority?
Mm.
Let's have you go see some customers. Let's interact with them. Let's work with them and find what they need. And
Mm.
then you, the technologist, can build it.
Amazing.
And you can build on the enthusiasm and create the enthusiasm if you have
Mm.
that first curious spark.
Very interesting. And what are some of the communication traps you have seen tech teams fall into? And how can they escape from these traps, if I can use that term?
That's a fantastic question. So I see people get into these kinds of traps all the time. I'll give you
Hmm.
just one live example that I'm working with right now. I'm helping a tech team learn to be much faster, and I'm really challenging them. And I'm saying, try to give new results, new features, new changes every single
Mm.
day.
Mm.
And most engineers think that's something from Mars. That's a requirement that no one could ever meet. In fact, I
Mm.
teach teams to do it all the time
Mm.
so that they can be highly accountable and get lots and lots of feedback. What you did
Mm.
yesterday was terrible. Don't do that anymore, Ashutosh. Do this thing
Mm.
instead. You come
Mm.
back tomorrow and it's slightly less bad. You come back
Yeah.
the day after that, it's actually starting to be good.
Mm.
And that's a different way to work with your technology team. Well, they're very resistant to it. They're looking
Mm.
at it and saying, man, this is so difficult. This is a real challenge. I don't think we can do this. There's all kinds of
Mm.
problems with it.
Mm.
the communication trap that the team fell into, the leaders of this team fell into, is they showed up one day and said, "Hey guys, why don't we try building something today and releasing it?" And the team
Mm.
said, "Who ordered that? That's
Correct.
not the problem we have. That's not meaningful to us."
Mm.
So that person wasn't curious enough about what they needed and wasn't able to use their language to describe it. And so they got
Mm.
a bad feeling at the beginning and they thought, oh, somebody's coming with some crazy idea and they're making us do
Mm.
it,
How
cracking the
interesting.
whip over us.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
bad. We don't like
Yeah.
this. Whereas if they had come along and said, what kinds of problems do you have? Well, we keep building stuff and the customers hate it. And when we get it done 6 or 9 months later, they never use it and they tell us it's terrible. And why didn't we build something else? Those
Mm.
bad customers, we don't like them.
Correct.
And if you started with that and you said, there's a way for you to get to know these customers and to
Mm.
get feedback from them every single day, and
Mm.
you already know how to do it, would that be interesting? They'd say, well, yeah, I hate wasting 6 months.
Mm.
What is this way? And then you're off to a different discussion. So that was lack of curiosity in the beginning and not using the language of the person you're talking to. And when you can
Mm.
discover that language and use it, your sales process goes better if you're selling. But if you're internally trying to lead a change, you're also selling, and that sales
Very
process
interesting.
goes better too.
Fascinating. You also talk about productive conflict.
Mm-hmm.
How can tech leaders foster that without creating toxicity?
Well, you're going to create some toxicity. You're not going to be able to avoid it. The trick is to
Hmm.
nip it in the bud
Yeah.
and control it and control the norms so
Mm.
people see how productive conflict works and unproductive conflict gets squashed. But you can't prevent the unproductive conflict. It's going to happen. And it's already happening today. It's just
Mm.
probably happening down the pub or outside the office when people are taking a smoke break or whatever.
Mm.
They're saying, "Oh yeah, those marketing people, boy, they really suck. They just make all these requirements and they don't listen to us."
Mm.
That's unproductive conflict that's hidden and you're not seeing it. It's
Mm.
much better to get that into the open
Mm.
and to get people debating about what the good and bad looks like and what they should be doing, what they shouldn't, and then making a firm decision in public that you can test. And if you do a process of joint design, that's the fancy name for it. It's in chapter 5 of my book.
Mhm.
If you use that kind of process,
Mm.
then you get the conflict out
Mm.
and you get it in a public forum in a productive way, in a helpful way.
Mm.
So, for example, I have a client I was just talking to this morning, and the software team has built something for the customers to use,
Mhm.
and the CEO says this doesn't work. But the engineers say it does work. Look, I can test it. Look, I got my phone right here. Tap, tap, tap. Look, it works. They're disagreeing about a fact. And
Mm.
that's not very productive because a fact you can test. Go sit down with the engineers, use the phone, use the service, do whatever it is you're trying to test,
Mhm.
and get to an actual fact. Then have a debate about how to use that fact. Wait a minute, it's too slow. It's not interesting enough. It doesn't have good enough design. It doesn't have this feature or that feature. Those you can have a productive conflict about.
Right.
So the secret is to make sure that you have conflicts about whatever it is in the open, and that you stop conflicts about facts because they're not
Mm.
conflicts. They're
Mm.
disagreements and differing opinions. Those are healthy,
Yeah.
but you want them couched in terms of I think it would be better if we did this, or I think we'd do better if we did that.
Mm.
The key
Fascinating.
technique for this is called a genuine question, where instead of
Mm.
asking a leading question like, don't you think we should have the podcast on every Thursday, Ashutosh?
Mm.
I say
Mm.
something like, which days work best? I have the opinion that Thursday might be
Yeah.
good, but you
Yeah.
might have a different opinion. What do you think?
Mm.
That's
Mm.
a productive conflict where I
Absolutely.
say Thursday, you say Tuesday, and
Yeah.
we discuss the merits of each rather
Mm.
than just pounding our chests and
Correct. Great
saying, I want
response.
Thursday.
Great response. And what are some early warning signs that a tech team is underperforming, even if the business metrics seem to look fine?
If the business metrics look fine, the team is performing. That
Okay.
would be my argument. Now, the
Okay.
problem is far too many people use things that are proxies for business metrics without realizing
Mm.
it.
Mm.
So they'll say something like, well, I just need the tech team to build this list, the laundry list of things that would be good to build. That's
Mm.
a not unreasonable way of
Mm.
measuring their day-to-day progress.
Mm.
But if you want to know whether they're really performing, is that list the right list? Are they building
Mhm.
it and saying it's done, but it's actually not what customers need and nobody's going to buy it and everybody's going to churn?
Mm.
That's what you actually need to understand.
Mm.
So a thing like velocity or capacity or number of features finished or story points or all those things, people think those are business metrics. They aren't.
Mm.
Important business metrics that you should actually pay attention to are things like value delivered.
Mm.
Interactions with customers, or the frequency of those interactions, ability to maintain the system and operate it and monitor that it's actually running. I have
Mm.
a whole booklet, which I'm happy to send free to any of your listeners, called Squirrel's Tech Radar. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a full book like Agile Conversations, it's a teeny little booklet,
Mm.
and it just goes through the 6 main metrics that you need to look at.
Yeah.
And they're all business focused. They're all business outcomes that you will see on your bottom line. If you're
Mm.
measuring by anything else, you're not getting meaningful information about what your tech team is doing, and you will
Mm.
get caught, just like you said, Ashutosh.
Mm. Well said. Have you ever encountered a team that seemed too far gone? And if yes, how do you know how, when to try and get them to pivot?
Well, I can tell you a hair-raising story. This has happened only one time out of
Right?
350 companies, so I don't want
Mm.
people to think I'm this kind of consultant because I
Mm.
didn't plan for this. But I came into one company where the organization had been investing in a technology project outsourced to a group of developers all over Europe, and they
Mm-hmm.
just kept adding more developers.
Mm.
And finally, they came to me and said, Squirrel, what are all these people doing? We're not sure.
Yeah.
We keep throwing in more money. And they
Mm.
keep showing us, and again, back to the metrics, they keep showing
Mm.
us these great results and these graphs that are going up and so on. We can't see that we're actually getting anything.
Mm.
They were in fraud prevention, and they couldn't say that they were actually preventing any fraud.
Mm.
And so I went in and I looked, and I found that none of them had built any component, any piece of code that could work with any other piece of code. They were all
Right.
completely incompatible. Imagine you
Mm.
built a house, but you were building it out of boards that were all different widths and lengths. And so they would never fit together, and you couldn't make a reasonable wall or foundation or anything.
Mm.
That's what these folks had done. And I came back to the organization with my final report and I said, folks, the hundreds and hundreds of thousands that you've invested is gone down the tubes. There's nothing we can do with it. We have to start again. And these folks have wasted their energy on building things that are incompatible with each other.
Mm-hmm.
That was on Friday. I came back on Monday, and it was a virtual team, but it was virtually empty. It's like the room
Mm.
I'm in now. You can hear the echo. There was nobody there. And
Mm.
I virtually looked in the corner, and there was one guy left. And he was the one who'd worked on the old system. All the folks were building the new, exciting, fantastic, beautiful new thing that was going to solve everybody's problems, but didn't actually
Mm.
work. And
Mm.
this guy just kept churning along and working on the old thing and actually making new things that were valuable to customers. Guess what?
Mm.
Everybody else was gone on Monday. Now, I hadn't told the organization to do that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't surprised or disappointed.
Yeah.
And guess what? We built more than that whole group had built
Mm.
with the one person in a few months than they had accomplished in a year. So
Mm.
that doesn't happen often, but you
Yeah.
asked about where a team
Yeah.
was too
Yeah.
far
Yeah.
gone. That team wasn't even a team. They were
Fascinating.
so divided and they
Mm.
hadn't produced anything unified and
Fascinating.
working.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing this.
Sure.
Um, Douglas, what does a typical guided transformation look like with you? Where does it begin and how long does it take?
So typically 2 to 3 months. So
Hmm.
the one I was referring to earlier is a good example. And what I do more and more and more these days is I help other people to raise their skills to do this so
Hmm.
they can do it again
Yeah.
without me or with a little bit of advice from me instead of needing me to be there guiding everything.
Mm.
So typically what I'll do is I'll get very clear on what the company's strategy is. Often you find that the engineers are really unclear and very distant from any kind of strategic decision. You mean really? We're going into China? Wait a
Hmm.
minute. We're going to try to buy one of our competitors? I
Hmm.
never knew that. And if you tell
Mm.
your engineers that kind of thing, they
Mm.
will have useful ideas and feedback and might even tell you your idea is stupid, good or
Mm.
technically infeasible. Good to know at the beginning.
Yeah.
Once we've got that clear, then I'm going to have one or two leaders who are going to take the head of the charge, and I'm going to focus very intensely on them. And for example, I might meet them every single day for very brief periods and give them homework. Say, okay, Ashutosh, your first mission is to go find our crack team, our shock troops, who are going to go
Mm.
out there and build the new version in a very ugly, horrible way, but get feedback early from customers. And
Yeah.
then your next mission is to go and find some contractors we can hire to fill in behind them and put in the more robust version.
Mm.
And so you might then report back to me on that the next day. How far you got? I probably didn't get very far. Great,
Mm.
because I can help you to correct and improve and change what you're doing.
Mm.
So that's the kind of intensity that I work with, and you can see that just from watching me.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love pushing people hard, getting difficult conversations going, getting people trying things they never knew they could try.
Amazing. Yeah.
And if I can push people in that way, I get tremendous results very quickly. So typical
Fascinating.
duration is 2 to 3 months.
Amazing. And what are some of the biggest blind spots tech executives tend to have about their teams?
They think that their teams start and end with technological capability. And so I'm always astonished at how many engineering organizations, HR organizations focus on a certain set of skills. And they'll write down a job description and say, well, I want somebody who has 2.7 years of this and 3.9 years of that. And they've done this in this way and they're accomplished in this technology. And that isn't what makes the big difference. So what I counsel people to do over and over again is to look for meaningful short-term results that they can give very rapid feedback on. And once you can do that, you can fill in all the gaps that you need. People can learn new programming languages. They can get to know the strategy. They can understand your customers better if they have contact with your customers.
Amazing. I have time for two more questions for you, Douglas.
Great.
You speak about insane profitability.
I do.
What does that mean in a tech context beyond just revenue?
Well, I'll tell you about a company that I just worked with recently in one of the Baltic countries. And they unfortunately went into an industry that just took a massive hit. So they're servicing this industry. They aren't in it themselves. They're providing software for these people who, when the United States changed administration and shut down a bunch of things, these guys got completely shut down. Now, they could have just gone and cried in their beer, right? And given up and said, we're not going to do anything. These guys were really resilient. I'm so proud of them because what they did is they said, we can use artificial intelligence in an intelligent way to do a lot of what our company used to do. And therefore, even though we don't have all the resources that we might like to have, we can actually use AI to do a lot of it. And they got their engineers to really quickly skill up and become very good at AI and to actually produce a lot of the software and a lot of the mechanisms and scripts and tools that they were using AI instead of more colleagues because they'd had to fire a bunch of their colleagues. And they were making do with a much smaller engineering team, but tremendously successful. Now, the thing is that once you've done that once, it scales like you wouldn't believe. You don't have to go and manufacture. If I'm making pens, I have to go and get plastic and ink and stuff and put it together and make a pen. When I'm putting together ones and zeros, there's no limit to how many I can put together.
Correct.
And they each have value.
Yeah.
So there's tremendous opportunity here. It's as if I told you, look, Ashutosh, we're going to build a factory. We're not going to put any inputs in it. No workers have to work in the factory. All we have to do is you and me, we go lie on the beach and money pours out of the factory. And that's insanely profitable. Well, people are doing that. People are getting that kind of result. And a lot of other folks are saying, I wonder how they're doing that. The answer is technology scales like you wouldn't believe, used correctly, with the right conversations, with the right focus, with the right strategy. And when you get that right, you get a tremendous money machine.
Fascinating. And my last question for you, Douglas, if you had one message to give every tech executive about building great teams, what would it be?
Stop talking to your team. Because the people you think are in your team are not actually your team. If you're a tech executive, the people you need to talk to are the ones in marketing, the people in sales who are out there playing golf with your customers, the customers themselves, the account managers who are in there trying to hold the hands of the customers who are trying to figure out your crazy software and how hard it is to use. The customer service people who are fielding the angry phone calls. Those are the people you need to spend a lot of time with. You should have an effective engineering team who are ready to listen, who have good leaders, who have good processes, and have the ability to produce really rapid results. So you can take them back to all those people when they complain to you and say, this is slightly less bad. How much less bad is it? Well, it's 1% less bad. Okay, I'll be back tomorrow. It'll be 2%.
Yeah.
And if you keep doing that, pretty soon, you have something that's not too bad that customers suddenly start to like and tell their friends about instead of being angry with you.
Oh,
so
amazing.
I would get out of the office, talk to people who are not in your team to build a great team.
What a powerful piece of advice or a lesson. But on that note, as you were talking about this lesson, I was reminded, I used to tell many, many years ago, my tech teams that, if I'm asking you to solve something for me, you're not listening to what I'm telling you. You're already thinking of what the answer is, and you're coding in your own mind, which means that you're not thinking. And it's so right that you're saying that go and start talking to your customer. But on that note, also, Douglas, thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. Thank you for speaking to me about Squirrel Squared Limited and the amazing work that you're doing with so many tech leaders and helping them. Thank you again, and good luck to you.
Lots of fun. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.